How much would you be willing to sell your children's health for? To strangers, people you don't know, people you've heard of on the news, but people you don't really truly know, how do you know you can trust them? For billions and billions of dollars, maybe, but they're not giving that to you. They're giving you $1,200, maybe. Or maybe they'll send you some extra money. But in the long run, there's more going on, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. This is Dr. Amy Hayek, and I am president and co-founder of Animal Chiropractic Education Source, where we train doctors to build successful animal chiropractic practices, and those practices help their communities to become more healthy. We're going to talk today a little bit about the connection between some of the animal viruses that we see and what's going on with humans right now. One of the issues with animal models is that people pick and choose. They don't, science, so people say, well, where's the science? And when we show them an animal model, they say, but it's an animal model. However, when they want to test this virus, this vaccine, they say we should test on animal models, and we completely sort of agree. We really don't think they should test on animals either, because I think it's too dangerous for them as well. But one of the reasons we're willing to test on animals is that they are farther removed. They can't speak for themselves, and they don't speak in our language, and we also get to pick and choose what we see as their side effects. When we test on human models, we see actual side effects. We see exactly what goes on in the human. And the human and their relatives can then voice their opinions about the efficacy and the safety of what happens. With animals, we don't get that opportunity. So am I saying testing on humans is better? No. What I'm saying is that these vaccines that they're developing are so dangerous that testing on anyone is not the best idea. Until they can come up with an actual vaccine, they've already shown in the MMR vaccines that the vaccine itself is highly more dangerous than the disease itself. And one of the things that we know, even about this current coronavirus, is that the human body is doing what it's supposed to do. Most of us are getting rid of it. 99% of people are getting rid of the virus, and it's mutating so that it can live a happy, healthy life. And that is my next point. My next point is that viruses, bacteria, are like immigrants moving into a new country. So if you immigrate to a new country, you go, you find a home, you find a place to live, you have to, decide how you're going to feed your family, you have to find a school for your kids. All of those things are the things that new viruses are doing when they move into a new environment, like this coronavirus. And in some cases, it doesn't behave like it should. The environment doesn't respond to it appropriately. The environment's trying to kill off the virus, and the virus is trying to fight back. And once it reaches that homeostasis, that level where the virus can live happily with the host, then things will quiet down. And that's what 99% of people who've been infected with this virus have done. They have founded a home, got it a job, sent its kids to school, and everybody's happy and living coordinated together with the other bazillion viruses and bacteria in the body that have already done the very same thing. One of the things we know about those childhood mumps, measles, and whooping cough and all those things is that they prep the body to be able to handle other diseases that could happen later on. In a study, when they went in and they vaccinated a bunch of children in Africa for diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. They did it and said, oh, nothing happened after 40 days, but they never went back and did the follow-up study until a group of scientists went back a year or so later, a couple years later, and what they found was that those children who'd been vaccinated for those relatively innocuous small children illnesses, we're now having more chronic and debilitating later in life illnesses because their bodies weren't set up and ready to take care of those illnesses. And I think what we're seeing is that in this same case, people who are vaccinated against the flu are having worst case scenarios against the coronavirus because their body didn't get that preemptive flu strike so that it could prepare itself for something more coming on that definitely has some other issues going on, and in many people is affecting, because of the way the vaccine's put together, it's affecting their other organ systems besides just the respiratory system. And that's why people who are highly inoculated, which tend to be our seniors and our people who have more illnesses because they're vaccinated because they go to the doctor more often anyway, those are the people who are having the biggest stress. Why do they have those chronic illnesses in the first place? Because they were probably inoculated more as children. It has been shown that since childhood vaccines have increased, so too have chronic adult illnesses. The next thing I want to talk about, though, is where that immunity in those people who have been not vaccinated comes from. A lot of our whole body is full of organ systems that fight off and protect us from infections. We've talked about it earlier. The skin is the first layer. The GI tract is the second layer. If you just look at the embryo, it builds on that. First the skin is made, then the GI tract, then the nervous system. In that order, those are the layers that protect us from illnesses and injuries. When that nervous system is functioning and firing, here, especially at the seat of the head, because that's where a lot of the organs of the brain that affect metabolism and immune function sit. When those are moving like they should, the rest of the body moves better. And that's why the chiropractic adjustment is so important. When that chiropractic adjustment is delivered on a routine basis to keep things moving through the spinal cord, then the rest of the body gets messages and hormone function and a balance of chemical messages so that it can do all the things that it needs to do. We've seen this in animal models, and people are unwilling sometimes to make that crossover, but the body, the nervous system, nature likes to have patterns. So if it sets up one pattern that worked, it's going to repeat that pattern because it worked. And the nervous system and that spinal cord are one of those patterns that tends to work, and so nature has continued to use that pattern. The example that I have seen in my own life included the equine rhinopneumonitis vaccine. So equine rhinopneumonitis has two forms. One is a respiratory form. Rhinopneumonitis means in the nose, and the neurologic form, which affects the nervous system. Animals who are vaccinated for rhinopneumonitis, the form that's in the nose, have a higher propensity to have worse side effects if they become infected with the rhinopneumonitis neurologic form. What happens is these animals become infected, maybe are not showing symptoms, and when they go to a stressful situation, and usually when we see these outbreaks are when these animals are at something like a show. So horses who've been to big shows that have lots of animals where their owners are stressed and they're stuck in a box stall and they can't get out and move around, that's when these horses come down with rhinopneumonitis, the neurologic form, and they spread it and infect other animals. So other animals that are in that stressful situation begin to show signs and symptoms. There have been two cases where this has occurred, And it's been highly publicized, and lots of quarantines have gone on, and there were lots of people who were exchanging a lot of money because of it. As a result, horses died. But we had 2 cases in our very own practice where they didn't. One of them was a consult client of ours who, in Arizona, made sure that when our horses came home from that show, they were adjusted on a regular basis. They maintained their normal fluid status, either through drinking extra water or getting IV fluids, and they had nothing but a low-grade fever and survived. Another instance was one of our graduates who works in a referral hospital in an area of Texas that is surrounded by a lot of horse clients. And when those horses came back from a show and the outbreak spread throughout the community, many people were resorting to vaccination, which is one of the recommendations by the American Association of Equine Practitioners. However, she elected in her practice to not vaccinate, but rather support the immune system with appropriate fluids and chiropractic adjustments of exclusively the atlanto-occipital joint every single day. Every horse in her practice lived. None of them came down with anything worse than a mild fever. The surrounding practices were losing horses left and right. What it goes to show us is that the body, when it's allowed to do its job, is an amazing, amazing machine and able to establish good environmental protection, but it's also very, very good at welcoming new immigrants and helping them to establish a better position and make that community stronger. And that's exactly my point, is that that new immigrant to the body actually will make it stronger in the future against other new immigrants, other new attacking viruses and bacteria. And because of that, those horses that survived that rhinopneumonitis neurologic form will never be able to get it again. However, we don't really know what else they are protected against yet. We may find out in the future that there are other potentially deadly diseases that could be a problem for horse populations that these horses are now protected from because they had an appropriate immune response to the rhinopneumonitis. How does that affect human populations? The very same way. The getting childhood diseases affects the nervous system and the immune system so that they can appropriately respond to new viruses and illnesses that they come into contact with, like this coronavirus. So my last thing for my audience to consider is this. How much are you willing to pay someone? Are you willing to give billions and billions of dollars to someone you do not know, but you think you trust, to kill your children's economic welfare and health? Because that's exactly what is happening when we agree to put up with this whole scheme of vaccinating our children, vaccinating ourselves. We are cutting off the head. We are cutting off the normal immune system of our own bodies. We are eliminating our ability to, even if we don't have an adverse reaction to this vaccine, we're eliminating our ability to protect ourselves from future illnesses and injury that may become evident later on in life for us, for our children. The other thing we're doing is we're also damaging the economic stability for our children who will need to be able to live in an environment where they can be secure and feel that they have a stable ability to survive with their families. If we are giving billions and billions to someone to develop fake food and vaccines, what else are we willing to give up for our own ability to establish a normal immune system within our whole systems. We see that in animals. We see that in humans right now. We have crossed that line. We used to think that it was okay to damage the lives of animals for the sake of humans. But right now, we're damaging the lives of humans for the sake of money. Thanks for joining me. This is Dr. Amy Hayek, President and co-founder of Animal Chiropractic Education Source. I hope I've given you some line of thought and some information that helps you understand what exactly the immune system does and how it's connected directly to the animals that surround us. The animals that surround us are not separate from us. They are a part of our lives, and we are a part of theirs. And without any one of them, none of us would be here. I would not be here if it weren't for you being here. Thanks for joining me. I hope this is helpful. Please let your friends know that it's really important that we don't sacrifice our health and our human children's health. I should say it that way. Our human children's health for someone to make a lot of money. That our health, our children's economic health, the health of the animals around us all depend on our ability to work together and not be separated.